Tonight on the Worldview Report, the Biden regime throws another peaceful pro-life American in prison for multiple years. Ford Motor Company threatens to stop selling most of its gas-fueled vehicles in the UK due to oppressive regulations. And speaking of electric vehicles, are they making some drivers sick to their stomachs? Evidence suggests they are not imagining these symptoms. An iconic American restaurant chain closes nearly 50 locations and is contemplating bankruptcy. It could be just the start of a wave of failures in the restaurant business. One of Europe's largest and most important countries and a key NATO ally is considering re-implementing the military draft as it prepares for war with Russia. And we'll take an in-depth look at the computerization of education. Has it helped or hindered the education of children in elementary through high school? All these stories and more as the Worldview Report begins right now.
This is Worldview Report with host Brannon Howse. Whether it is news from the nation's capital or your state capital, from the classroom to the boardroom, from national security to national and local news that impacts you and your family, Worldview Report is your trusted source for vital and uncensored news. And now, here is Brannon Howse.
Good evening and welcome to the Worldview Report. We start off tonight with another example of how the Biden Justice Department is going after pro-life Christian Americans. Lauren Handy was sentenced to nearly 5 years in prison for her efforts to peacefully save the lives of preborn babies. Attorneys for the Thomas More Society said they are now preparing an appeal on behalf of Handy, which will seek to overturn her conviction and challenge the constitutionality of the FACE Act. That stands for Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances. On August 29, 2023, Handy was convicted by a Washington, D.C. federal jury on charges of violating the FACE Act under, quote, conspiracy against rights, end quote. These federal charges were brought by the Biden regime against Handy and several other pro-lifers and carried a potential sentence of up to 11 years. The DOJ requested a sentence of 6.5 years, while Thomas More Society, their attorneys, asked the court to show leniency with a 12-month sentence. During the sentencing hearing, letters were presented attesting to Handy's deep commitment to nonviolence and history of humanitarian work. Martin Cannon, a senior counsel for Thomas More, reacted to the sentence. Quote, there was only one thing around which Ms. Handy and her co-defendants were unified, and that was nonviolence. They conspired to be peaceful. Yet today, the court granted the Biden Department of Justice its wish by sentencing Ms. Handy to 57 months, nearly 5 years in prison, for her efforts to peacefully protect the lives of innocent preborn human beings. Ms. Handy deserves thanks, not a gut-wrenching prison sentence. We will vigorously pursue an appeal of Ms. Handy's conviction and attack the root cause of this injustice. That is the FACE Act, which we believe is unconstitutional and should never again be used to persecute peaceful pro-lifers, end quote. Steve Crampton, another senior counsel, added, quote, Ms. Handy's 57-month sentence is a miscarriage of justice, plain and simple. As I have gotten to know Ms. Handy, I've seen up close her unwavering passion for pro-life advocacy and resolute dedication to nonviolence. The caricature of Ms. Handy that the Biden Department of Justice fabricated flies in the face of reality. But this fight is far from over, and we eagerly look forward to appealing for Ms. Handy and her co-defendants' freedom so that the FACE Act can never again be weaponized by the Department of Justice against its ideological opponents, end quote. Steve Crampton, by the way, has been someone I've known as a friend for many years, so good for him and the Thomas More Society. Ford Motor Company may soon report to limiting the sales of its gasoline-fueled vehicles, this is in the UK, as it struggles to meet the electric car sales targets that have been laid out in the British government's zero emissions vehicle mandate. Introduced at the start of this year, the zero emissions mandate requires manufacturers to ensure that a minimum percentage of their overall sales are battery powered or face fines of up to $15,000 for every non-compliant car sold over the limit. This year, the target is set at 22%. While electric vehicle sales continue to grow due to corporate fleet demand, private buyers are showing their reluctance to make the transition to electric cars. According to the latest industry figures, fewer than 17% of models registered in April boasted zero emissions powertrains. Ford, which currently only has the Mach-E in its EV passenger car lineup, is one of the manufacturers feeling the pressure. The company's European boss of its electric car division, Martin Sander, well, he told the Financial Times, quote, "We can't push EVs into the market against demand. We're not going to pay penalties. We are not going to sell EVs at huge losses just to buy compliance. The only alternative is to take our shipments of engine-powered vehicles to the UK down and sell these vehicles somewhere else," end quote. Consumers have many reasons for resisting having electric cars force-fed to them by overreaching government bureaucrats and climate alarmists. They are not as reliable, of course, as gas-fueled cars. They are more expensive to buy and, of course, more expensive to maintain. And the claim that they are greener or more environmentally friendly, well, that is completely fraudulent, a fraudulent narrative, a lie. They actually cause more harm to the environment than gasoline engines when you consider the batteries that come with the cars and several other factors. But now motorists are finding a new reason to hate electric cars. An often touted advantage of owning an electric vehicle is one-pedal driving, when drivers can slow down a vehicle simply by lifting off the throttle. But as more Americans swap their gas-powered cars and trucks for electric vehicles, ABC News reports that some are also realizing there are drawbacks to the one-pedal experience. John Vogler, former editor of Green Car, reports that a contributing editor at Car and Driver told ABC News, quote, "It can cause some people to get sick. Strong, regenerative braking, which recaptures max energy, can cause motion sickness. There is a learning curve to lifting off the accelerator in an EV. You have to modulate it," end quote. He said he has felt queasy at least twice while riding in the back seat of a Tesla. Quote, "The drivers didn't know how to modulate Tesla's strong regenerative braking. I was thrown around a little bit," end quote. Ed Kim, president and chief analyst of Auto Pacific, said Teslas are the worst offenders because they can be, quote, "very jerky and really abrupt," end quote. In a sign of the times, the iconic seafood brand Red Lobster announced it is abruptly closing nearly 50 restaurants, laying off hundreds of workers and considering a bankruptcy filing. Red Lobster has closed locations throughout the United States. That's according to a liquidation company. Neil Sherman, the chain's CEO and founder of Tag X Brands, announced in a post on LinkedIn that his company would be hosting, quote, "the largest restaurant liquidation," end quote, through an online auction. The website for Tag X Brands showed that 48 Red Lobster locations throughout the U.S. had already been closed, and more closures could be on the horizon. Red Lobster restaurants in places such as Jacksonville, Florida, Watertown, New York, and Bloomingdale and Danville, Illinois, they were among the restaurants that have recently been closed. The seafood chain has more than 700 locations throughout the U.S. That's according to its website. Sherman wrote in a post to LinkedIn, quote, "The furniture, fixtures, and equipment from select Red Lobster locations must go ASAP. We're handling this closure differently than we have in the past, with each auction having a single winner for the listed items from the location they bid on. Winner takes all," end quote. This announcement, well, it comes after the seafood establishment has reportedly been considering filing for bankruptcy after Their all-you-can-eat shrimp promotion led to the company losing $11 million in 2023. Red Lobster CFO Ludovic Garnier said in a statement in November, quote, "For those who have been in the U.S. recently, $20 was very cheap. And the rationale for this promotion was to say, we know the price was cheap, but the idea was to bring more traffic into the restaurants," end quote. Restaurant industry analysts are predicting many more companies could falter this year and fall into bankruptcy as they struggle with food inflation and the oppressive Biden economic agenda. One of the U.S. and NATO's most important allies is considering re-implementing the military draft. Germany could announce plans soon to recruit teenagers to fight in a potential World War III scenario with Russia. Leaked documents show plans by the German government to conscript all young men and women as soon as they turn 18. It comes after Defense Minister Boris Pistorius admitted the banning of Germany's compulsory military service in 2011 was a, quote, mistake, end quote. The new initiative could be made public as early as next month, according to German news outlets. Meanwhile, Britain's news channel reports that NATO member countries have been urged to bring back conscription amid fears about Russia's threat to the West, with Latvian President Edgars Rinkevics stressing the need to ramp up military spending to levels not seen since the end of the Cold War. The document suggests there are three options for the policy. In the first, Germany would bring back a compulsory military year for young men once they turn 18, which was suspended in 2011, and apply it to the women as well. This option would mean the German Constitution would need to be amended, but is seen inside the Defense Ministry as the most likely to receive societal approval. Secondly, the policy would only apply to 18-year-old men, but would not see everyone selected. They would be required to fill, out a form online and could then be chosen for service. And here's the third option. The third option would avoid compulsory service, focusing instead upon optimizing the current system by engaging in more proactive recruitment campaigns. There is a fourth option. Make peace with Russia, folks, and end the war in Ukraine. But this is not on the table. The West has a problem on its hands. We know that. Its war with Russia is very unpopular back at home with the people. Why? Because no parent in Germany or in France or in America wants to send their son or their daughter off to fight and die in Ukraine. Folks, that's a country that has only been in existence for 30 years, and it's not even a NATO member. We'll be right back after this break.
We've learned through the pandemic we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. Stores were shut down and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
Welcome back from the break. Thank you for joining us tonight and every night. And thank you again for your support. One of our biggest sponsors, of course, is WVW Foundation.com. The foundation exists for many reasons, and one of them is obviously to push out free educational and ministry programming that helps people to understand the times through the lens of a Judeo-Christian worldview. Now, if you appreciate the fact that we produce this program that takes 7 of us, about 15 man-hours a day to put it together. That's a lot of staff to pay, folks. And then we turn around and we push it out for free on multiple platforms. How do we do that? Well, due to your support. We need your support. Our foundation needs your support so our foundation can continue to help with the bandwidth bill and some of the production cost of pushing out a free program. So please consider making a contribution at WVWFoundation.com. WVWFoundation.com. We are needing more donors, folks. We already talked about Red Lobster closing all these stores, right? Inflation. Well, that's had an impact on some of our donors who want to continue to support us, but they financially can't. And we get that. And they send us letters apologizing. And they don't need to apologize, but they want to make sure that we know they're not pulling their support for any reason other than they just can't afford to support us because of the cost of inflation. Many of them are retiring or have retired. They're on fixed incomes. We understand that. What that means is, folks, we are in a serious situation where we ourselves need to add more donors. So we need your support. We need it now. WVWFoundation.com. $5, $10 a month. WVWFoundation.com. So thank you again for seriously considering becoming a major sponsor of our foundation that brings you programs in part like this one here. WVWFoundation.com. And then don't forget about our Sunday night church service that I teach every Sunday night. Took off Sunday night, because it was the weekend of Mother's Day. But I'll be back this Sunday night, Lord willing, with Lesson 7 as I'm teaching through the book of Revelation. I'm very much enjoying what I'm learning, and I hope you're learning a lot as well. It is our Sunday night church service that is the WVW Foundation. I've been teaching that Sunday night church service since 2015. So join us Sunday nights, 8 p.m. Central at worldviewtube.com, worldviewtube.com, as I continue teaching through the book of Revelation. How timely is that? A Florida imam is getting blowback after having threatened the annihilation of all Jews. During a sermon at the North Miami Islamic Center in late April, Imam Dr. Fadi Kabalawi called for Allah to support, quote, our oppressed brothers, end quote, in Palestine, as well as for the total annihilation of Jews, who he describes as, quote, apes and pigs, end quote. That's a phrase that Islamists have historically used to describe Jews. The article about this Islamic cleric sermon, well, it appeared at Breitbart News. The Imam said in his sermon, quote, O Allah, annihilate the tyrannical Jews, for they are no match for you, O Allah. Annihilate the brothers of apes and pigs and cut off their seed, end quote. What Breitbart did not report is that Muslims, they get these hate-filled diatribes directly from their own so-called sacred scriptures in the Quran and the Hadiths. A clip of the sermon, which was originally streamed live on the mosque's Facebook page and later published by the Middle East Media Research Institute, well, it garnered nearly 80,000 views as of Monday afternoon. In it, the North Miami imam can also be seen accusing the Israeli army of being, quote, worse than Nazis, end quote, attributing wild and baseless allegations of soldiers stealing Palestinian skin and other organs. Quote, they steal the skin of the Palestinians. It is not enough that they stole their land. Now they steal their skin, end quote. That's what he added, claiming that organs are, quote, missing from children and from adults, end quote. This imam, who is also a practicing dentist, issued a statement just weeks after the October 7th slaughter of 1,200 Jews in Israel. He was calling for Allah, quote, show us the black days that you inflict upon the Jews, end quote. Well, on Monday, Florida State Representative Randy Fine, who is chairman of the House Health and Human Services Committee, he penned a letter calling on the Florida Board of Dentistry to suspend the imam's dental license for, quote, openly advocating for violence against his Jewish patients, end quote. Breitbart reports that the parent company of Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook and Instagram social media platforms are diving headfirst into the world of AI-powered wearables with its so-called Camera Buds project. Camera Buds will combine, quote, audio video, and AI to form the ultimate surveillance capitalism data gathering tool, end quote. So reports Breitbart. Android Authority reports that according to a report by The Information, Meta, the parent to Facebook and Instagram, they are developing AI-powered earphones equipped with cameras internally codenamed Camera Buds. These earphones are designed to leverage AI capabilities for real-time, objective identification and foreign language translation, potentially making for a revolution in how users interact with their surroundings and providing Meta with an incredible amount of data about the personal lives of wearers and anyone they come in contact with. Zuckerberg has, well, he's shown a keen interest in the project, reviewing various design concepts for either in-ear buds or over-the-ear headphones. The company's leadership sees AI-powered earphones as the next logical step in the evolution of wearable technology, with competitors likely to follow suit. Now, remember what the World Economic Forum advisor Yuval Harari said. He said we're entering the age of surveillance capitalism, that it has arrived. And of course, it got jump-started by the COVID pandemic. And it is designed to replace human free will with artificial intelligence. The next step in this surveillance society is to place the surveillance, as you know, under the skin. Wearables, well, they're just a transaction from artificial intelligence being on your phone to it being inside your body. The sun released another powerful stream of energized particles toward Earth that caused blackouts all over the U.S. on Tuesday. The Daily Mail reports that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration showed disruptions over all of North America around 12:51 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The solar flare, classified as an X8.8, was the strongest to come from this cycle yet, which began in 2017. The stream launched from a sunspot, well, that has been pummeling our planet for the past few days, which NOAA has said is the size of the spot that caused the worst solar storm in history back in 1859. Space weather physicist Dr. Tamitha Skov told DailyMail.com, quote, as for the big X flare, it's the biggest of the cycle thus far. It would have been our first R4 level radio blackout, but it was partially blocked by the sun, end quote. The current solar cycle started in mid-December 2016, and we are now in the solar maximum phase, so said Skava. Quote, it's hard to tell if we have passed through the peak of solar maximum or not. Time will tell, end quote. The sunspot causing the chaos in space is AR3664, which grew to the size of the one that caused the 1859 Carrington event, which set telegraph stations on fire and disrupted communications worldwide. Subatomic debris of electrons and protons from the flare, well, they could also hit our planet. The particles, well, they have the ability to disrupt satellite communications, cause radiation hazards for astronauts, and interfere with power grids on the ground. NOAA, well, they have predicted a 60% chance of that happening this past Tuesday. Tuesday's flare, well, it follows days of solar activity that NOAA had warned could have been the worst solar storm in 165 years. Well, now it's time for our nightly Worldview Report commentary. In 2010, Bill Gates told educators that kids need computers in classrooms in order to learn. His company, Microsoft, donated laptops to schools nationwide. The company then made money through ongoing software upgrades. But this was an idea based on self-serving profits and propaganda. Not, of course, any hard data that proves that children can learn better from computers than they can from teachers. Independent journalist Michael Schellenberger reports that the evidence is now overwhelming that the opposite of the Gates model for learning is true. Computers actually hinder childhood learning. Schellenberger reports that many high-tech executives know this, and they are sending their kids to schools that rely on paper and pencils. He says schools need to go back to basics. This is what he wrote, quote, Today, students across the country use computers to learn English, math, science, and history. Tech companies and curriculum developers claim that this is helping them. Personal devices add digital platforms, they say, increase student engagement, and have huge educational benefits. Yet, in my experience as a speech-language pathologist, digital programs are ineffective and distracting for kids, end quote. He provides an example of a fifth-grade boy with ADHD who studies math from a computer program called My Path. Although he understands the concept the program presented, the boy had difficulty solving problems because of distractions on the screen. It increased his ADHD tendencies, impacted his reading, and caused him to become so frustrated that he impulsively clicked and swiped. He would have had far less difficulty if he had been given the same, problem on paper. Even Bill Gates wasn't convinced in 2013 that his tech-based strategy would actually work. Here's what the billionaire said, quote, "It would be great if our education stuff worked, but that we won't know for probably a decade," end quote. A decade later, here we are, and it's become clear, it doesn't work. The propaganda of 2010, it does not match the realities of 2024. If you walk through the halls of any school today, rather than, seeing students enthusiastically engaging in self-directed learning, you'll see many in a zombie-like trance staring at a screen while only half listening to the teacher. But there's really a bigger agenda here, and I deal with it in my book, Reclaiming a Nation at Risk, that I wrote in 1995. This actually goes back to the early 1960s, where change agents were working with the federal government to track children, their attitudes, values, feelings, and beliefs, and gain data on their families, and then use the computers in order to change a student's worldview by understanding what their so-called weakness was, and then through repetitive drilling, correcting that, not letting a child move on until they had obtained the right attitudes, values, feelings, and emotions. Each child would have their own area of weakness that needed to be corrected. This is why a computer is necessary, because every child will be working on his own areas of weakness to be corrected to come in line with the desired attitudes, values, feelings, and beliefs and worldviews of the government. This is the real agenda. Well, that does it for this edition of the Worldview Report. Thanks for watching and supporting this viewer-supported broadcast. You can do that one way by, I think, supporting your health at the same time by going to melissahousebg.com. Did you know that you can go there to melissahousebg.com and sign up and become an ambassador just like we are? And you know what? You might be able to make some extra income for your family during these tight economic times. And if you do so, you'll also be helping us. So if you're interested, go to melissahousebg.com. melissahousebg.com. There'll be a link there. Click the link that says, build a business for your family. And you can do that and find out about how you, too, can become an ambassador for Bella Grace through Melissa and I and our organization, and help us and help your family and your friends, and maybe some extra income for yourself in these tough economic times. You know, an extra $500 a month, an extra $1,000 a month might really help, right? So again, that's one option for some of you. All the details about that, as well as this elixir that has 3 powerful ingredients, and Melissa and I take it each and every day. We got a subscription. We urge you to do the same. Get a subscription and save. You'll find the full details at melissahousebg.com, melissahousebg.com. Another way I think you can support your health and us is by taking glutathione. This product here, Numi, contains glutathione. For more details, just go to NEUMI. That's Numi, NEUMI.com/house1. Find out about Numi and glutathione. And then finally, why not go to twc.health/Brannon. Get the Contagion Kit. Look, folks, it seems as though bird flu is going to be their disease X. And this kit, the Contagion Emergency Kit by the Wellness Company, is what Dr. Thorpe and others say you should have on hand. So again, go to twc.health/Brannon. Like during COVID, if you had the right meds like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and other things, you are fine. So get the Contagion Kit now before all this madness starts. If you use that URL, twc.health/Brannon, not only will you save money, but a percentage of each purchase comes back to support this broadcast. So everybody wins. twc.health/Brannon. Thank you for doing that. Well, that's our broadcast. Till next time, I'm Brannon Howse. May God save America. Take care.